All right, I wanted to kind of give you since we're talking about SQLite, a little bit of a overview of some of the things in SQLite so that they're familiar to you. I'm actually connected to PSQL at the command line here, so I can do things on both sides and I will compare them. I'm pretty certain I have a table called Bob, but let's do this. -d Bob. It has NNN as an integer. Let's drop Bob. It's just an arbitrary table that I'm going to create here. And let's do the same thing over here. Okay, so the commands that you've learned for Postgres work pretty well in other databases. Over here we have PSQL with an example DB. So let's create table Bob with n as an integer. If I can spell create. And let's insert some data into it. Into Bob. And values 1. And we'll do 2. Boy, that's inventive data right there. And we'll do the same thing in Postgres. It really works the same. If I can type create right the first time. So that we have the same values in both cases. You'll notice that when I do a describe of a table in Postgres, okay, I do \d and then the table name. And if I do a describe of it in SQLite, it's .table Bob, which just says that I have a table named Bob. If I want to actually describe it, I have to do a little bit more over there. I'm going to have to actually tell it which way I want it to do it, which will be .header on. If I type header right, .mode column and pragma table info. There is a built-in thing that we can called table info, and we'll cast it the name of the table. And we see a similar sort of thing in SQLite. And you know, you can put your interpretation on what the columns is or whether you like the formatting or not. The thing that I'd like to point out about it is that although the syntax for some of this stuff is a little bit different, the syntax for SQL is pretty darn close to being exactly the same. There are subtle differences that will make you annoyed. For instance, over here I can do insert. I can insert values that don't have anything and leave nulls and an entire row in Postgres. I cannot do that in SQLite. It will not insert an empty row. The handling of null is subtly different because the SQL standard for standardized query language is not specific quite about how you handle nulls. So there are some subtle differences. But by and large, anything that you can do in Postgres, you can do in SQLite. It's not as fast as you might imagine, since SQLite is really designed for having a single file as your database. I would not try to load a SQLite database with 57 terabytes of data. I think that that would be a mistake to have a file that large. It will probably handle it, but slowly. And it is not set up as a network database as much as it is set up as a database that you compile right into your code, which is the reason why I want to compare it to the database inside a bunch of these cryptocurrencies. LevelDB is one of them in Bitcoin, and take a look at if they're really getting something. Now, with LevelDB, you have a database that the only way you get access to it is if you write a program in some language like Go or C that accesses the hash store. You don't have the ability to create indexes. Okay, everything has to be addressed by the hash value. So it's much more limiting in terms of what it can do. But does that get you any performance benefit? And certainly it makes it more difficult to develop when you can't go in an interpreter like SQLite and say, oh, select this out and let me take a look at it.